My mother called at 6:47 on a Friday evening. I was standing in the kitchen of a restaurant that pays me $4,000 a month to make sure their numbers stay clean. I had a seating chart in one hand and a wine list in the other, and the head chef was asking me whether the Barolo or the Sangiovese paired better with the lamb. I looked at the screen. Her name. I almost let it go to voicemail. I should have let it go to voicemail. But 12 years of silence had trained my thumb to answer, because the rare times she called, something was usually wrong, or she needed something. Both felt the same. Ivy, listen, we're having dinner tonight at the Julienne. Don't come. I set down the wine list. It's a nice place, she continued, her voice carrying that practiced warmth she saved for when she was about to say something cruel. Very expensive, and I don't want you to feel uncomfortable. You know how it is. I knew how it was. I had known how it was since I was 24 years old, and standing in a courtroom watching a judge dissolve my business while my mother sat in the back row and whispered to my aunt. I told her she couldn't handle money. Don't embarrass us, she said. And then she hung up. Have you ever been told you don't belong in a room you built? I stood there for a moment, phone flat against my palm. The kitchen noise came back in layers, the sizzle of butter in a pan, a prep cook humming something country, the soft click of plates being stacked. Then I walked to the reservation screen and pulled up the evening schedule. There it was. Loretta Corbin, party of 14, main dining room, 7:30. She had booked it 3 weeks ago. I remembered because I had seen the name scroll across the system and felt my chest tighten for exactly 2 seconds before I went back to work. 14 people. She had invited 14 people to a restaurant I consult for. A restaurant where the hostess knows my coffee order, where the sommelier asks my opinion before adjusting the cellar rotation, where every server on staff has heard me present quarterly financials in the back office, and my mother told me not to come because I could not afford it. I touched the watch on my left wrist. My father's watch, silver face, leather band, the second hand ticking half a beat too slow. He gave it to me the Christmas before he left. I was 10. He said, "Hold on to this. Someday you'll understand why." I still don't fully understand, but I have worn it every day for 26 years, and nobody in my family has ever asked me why. I pulled up the other reservation, the private dining room, down the hall from the main floor. 8 guests, $12,000, under my name. It was a client event, a quarterly dinner I host for the restaurant group I consult for. 4 regional managers, 2 investors, 1 chef who is opening a second location, and 1 accountant who likes the breadsticks. These are people who return my calls. People who say my name and mean it. My phone buzzed. Blair. Hey, are you coming tonight? Mom booked this fancy restaurant for her birthday group or something. She said you probably can't make it. Probably can't make it was how Blair translated things. What Loretta actually said was, don't come and don't embarrass us. But Blair had spent 30 years softening our mother's edges, rounding off the sharp parts until they sounded almost kind. Blair did this because Blair was the one who stayed. Blair moved back in after her divorce. Blair ate dinner with Loretta every night. Blair heard the stories. I typed back, "I'll be there." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. Wait, really? Mom said you were busy. I am busy, I replied. I'll be there anyway. I put the phone in my pocket and found Wren in the walk-in cooler, checking produce deliveries with a clipboard and a permanent frown. My mother just called and told me not to come to your restaurant tonight. Wren did not look up from the clipboard. She knows you work here, right? She does not. Now Wren looked up. Ivy, you've been consulting for this restaurant for 3 years. You have a parking spot with your name on it. How does your mother not know what you do for a living? She thinks I temp. You temp. That's what I told her. 3 Christmases ago, she asked what I do. I said consulting. She said, like a temp? I said, sure, Mom, like a temp. Wren closed the cooler door, leaned against it, stared at me the way she stares at a fish that has gone slightly off. You spent $12,000 on a private room in my restaurant, and you never told your own mother you work here? Ivy, that's not privacy, that's performance art. I did not answer. Because Wren was not wrong. And the thing about being wrong is that it feels different when someone you respect says it out loud. It feels less like an accusation and more like a light turning on in a room you have been sitting in for years, thinking it was supposed to be dark. I had a choice. I could run my client dinner in the private room, stay behind the wall, let Marco and the staff handle the main floor, and leave through the back entrance at 10:15, like I always do. My mother would never know I was there. No confrontation. No mess. Or I could stay. I called Marco. He picked up on the first ring. Marco, the Corbin party tonight. 14 people, main room. Yes, Miss Corbin, 7:30. All confirmed. If anyone at that table asks about the private room, or asks who booked it, tell them my name. Don't volunteer it. But if they ask, don't hide it either. A pause. Marco had worked in hospitality for 22 years. He could read a situation the way a surgeon reads a scan. Understood, he said. I hung up. Looked at the seating chart one more time. My client dinner on one side of the wall. My mother's dinner on the other. 12 years of silence about to end, not because I planned it, but because I was done walking out the back door. I adjusted my father's watch. The second hand ticked, half a beat too slow, the way it always has. Then I went to work. The private dining room at the Julienne seats 8. Walnut table, linen, the color of heavy cream, 3 windows facing 2nd Avenue. I chose this room 2 years ago when Ren asked me to redesign the event packages. I picked the lighting, the chair fabric, the angle of the centerpieces. Every detail calibrated for a specific effect. Intimacy without pressure, elegance without performance. Tonight, it was mine. I walked the room at 6:55, adjusting a water glass 1 inch to the left, checking the wine temperature on the Barolo I had selected that morning. My clients would arrive at 7:30, same time as my mother's party in the main dining room, 40 feet away, separated by a hallway and a lifetime of things neither of us had said. Ren came in carrying a tasting plate. She set it on the table, crossed her arms, and watched me straighten a napkin that was already straight. You're doing the thing again. What thing? The thing where you rearrange objects that don't need rearranging because you can't rearrange the actual problem. I put down the napkin. Ren sat on the edge of the table, which she does in her own restaurant because she owns it and nobody can tell her not to. How long has it been since you told your family what you actually do? 12 years. 12 years. You could have told her any time. A text, a holiday card, a casual mention at Thanksgiving between the green beans and the pie. And say, what? Surprise, Mom? I'm not the failure you told everyone I was? She would have found a way to make it smaller. She always does. If you have ever watched someone take the best thing about you and fold it into something ordinary, you know what I mean. It is not dramatic. It is not a fight. It is the way they nod and say, oh, that's nice, and then change the subject to your sister, or their garden, or anything that is not you. Ren looked at me for a long time. You know what I think? I think you liked it. The secret. That's not fair. I didn't say it was fair. I said it was true. She left to check on the kitchen, and I stood alone in the room I had designed, surrounded by chairs I had chosen, under lights I had calibrated, and I thought about the first time silence felt like a choice instead of a wound. I was 24. I had opened a vintage furniture shop in East Nashville with a man I thought I loved and a business plan I had written on coffee shop napkins. We lasted 11 months. The shop folded, the man folded faster. I was left with $42,000 in debt and a lease I could not break. I called my mother. It was late, past 10. I could hear the television in the background, one of those courtroom shows she watches in her recliner with a cup of decaf balanced on the armrest. Mom, I need help. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said the sentence that rebuilt everything I would become. I told you. You can't handle money. You're just like your father. She did not yell. She did not lecture. She just stated it, the way someone states the weather, and then she told Aunt Gail, and Uncle Don, and her church group, and Blair, who was 18 at the time and still believed everything our mother said the way you believe gravity. Within 2 weeks, every person in my family knew I had failed. Not the details, not the long nights of trying, not the part where I sold my car to cover payroll for my one employee before I let her go. Just the headline, Ivy lost money, just like her father. I paid off the debt in 5 years. Alone. I enrolled in a financial certification program. I passed. I started consulting, first for small restaurants, then for bigger ones, then for Ren, who was opening the Julienne and needed someone who understood both the food and the math. Nobody in my family knew. Not because I tried to keep it secret, because nobody asked. When was the last time someone in your family asked you what you actually do? Not to be polite, not as a transition to talking about themselves. Actually asked, and then listened? Blair texted me once, maybe 4 years ago. Mom says you're still temping. Are you okay? Do you need anything? I typed back, I'm fine, and deleted it. Then typed, yeah, still temping. I hit send and sat with the lie the way you sit with a splinter you know is there but can't quite reach. Blair lives in our mother's house now, in the basement. After her divorce, she moved back, and Loretta converted the downstairs into what she calls Blair's apartment, which is a futon, a mini fridge, and a bathroom with no lock. Blair is 30 years old and eats dinner with our mother every night, and I know this because Blair posts photos of the meals on her social media with captions like "Home cooking hits different." My old room is upstairs. Blair mentioned it once, casually, the way she mentions everything. Mom hasn't touched your room. It's exactly the same. Your posters, your books, your bedspread. She goes in there sometimes and just sits. I did not know what to do with that information. I still do not. Because a woman who keeps your room like a museum but tells the world you are a failure is not a simple villain. She is something harder to fight. She is a person who misses you in private and dismisses you in public, and I have spent 12 years trying to figure out which version is real. My phone buzzed. Marco. Miss Corbin, your guests are confirmed. 7:30, and the Corbin party in the main room is arriving. Should I seat them? Seat them, I said. I'll be in the private room. I straightened my blazer, checked my reflection in the window. The woman looking back at me had good posture, clean nails, a watch that ticked half a beat too slow. She looked like someone who had it together. She also looked like someone who had been hiding for a very long time. My clients arrived at 7:32. 4 regional managers, 2 investors, 1 chef opening his second location in Germantown, and an accountant named Phil who always sits closest to the bread. They shook my hand, complimented the room, and settled into conversation the way people do when they trust the person who organized the evening. I poured wine. I reviewed the quarterly numbers. I answered questions about tax optimization for multi-location food service businesses, which is the kind of sentence that puts most people to sleep but keeps my clients writing checks. At 7:41, I excused myself to check on a delivery issue Ren had flagged. That was the excuse. The truth was that the hallway between the private dining room and the main floor has a window, frosted glass, chest height, but if you stand at the right angle near the service station, you can see the tables closest to the bar. My mother's table was the long one by the window. 14 people. I recognized most of them. Aunt Gail at the far end, wearing the turquoise earrings she wears to every event because Uncle Don bought them for their anniversary, and she promised him she would never stop. Cousin Marcus and his wife. 2 women from Loretta's old office. A couple I did not recognize, probably friends from her new book club. The one she joined after Blair moved back in because I need intellectual stimulation now that I'm a full-time caregiver. Full-time caregiver. Blair is 30 years old and healthy, but Loretta has a talent for turning every situation into a story where she is the hero bearing the heaviest weight. Blair's divorce became Loretta's sacrifice. Blair's unemployment became Loretta's burden. If Blair caught a cold, Loretta would find a way to make it about her immune system. And there, 2 seats from the head of the table, was Blair. She was wearing a dress I had not seen before, something borrowed probably, and she was laughing at something Marcus said, and for a second she looked like the girl I remember from before everything got complicated, before the narratives hardened, before I became the cautionary tale and she became the project. My phone buzzed. Blair again. Mom just told everyone you're going through a rough patch. Direct quote. I'm sorry. I stared at the text. Rough patch. I run financial consulting for 11 restaurant accounts across Middle Tennessee. I filed my taxes this year with a 6-figure adjusted gross income and 0 debt. My credit score is higher than my mother's age. But at that table, 40 feet from where I stood, I was going through a rough patch. I typed back. What else did she say? Three dots. Then, she told Aunt Gail she's worried about you, that you've been temping for years and she doesn't know how you pay your bills. Gail said she gave Mom money a while back to help you. Did you know about that? I did not know about that. I read the message twice. Aunt Gail gave my mother money. To help me. Money I never saw, never heard about, never asked for. My mother took money from her own sister on my behalf and never told me. Have you ever discovered that someone was telling a story about you that you didn't know existed? Not a rumor, not gossip. A whole narrative, with details and timelines and financial transactions built around a version of you that has never been real? I put my phone away, leaned against the service station wall. Through the frosted glass, I could see shapes moving, glasses being raised. I heard my mother's laugh, the one she uses when she wants everyone at the table to know she is having a wonderful time. It is a specific laugh, higher than her real one, longer than necessary. It fills the room the way perfume fills an elevator, whether you want it to or not. A server passed me carrying a tray of appetizers for the main room. She paused. Miss Corbin, are you okay? Fine, I said, just checking on the flow. She nodded and kept walking. Everyone at the Julienne knows me as someone who checks on the flow, steady, organized, precise. Nobody here has ever seen me rattled because I do not get rattled. I get quiet. And quiet, in my family, was always mistaken for having nothing to say. I went back to the frosted glass. Blair was looking at her phone under the table, typing something. My phone buzzed. Gail asked Mom how much she gave. Mom changed the subject fast, like suspiciously fast. Then she started talking about how proud she is of me and how I'm finding my footing after the divorce. She literally used me as a distraction. Classic. I almost smiled. Blair was starting to see the machinery. Not all of it. Not yet. But the edge of something. The way you notice a seam in wallpaper you always thought was smooth. Blair sent one more message. Also, she just told everyone I'm doing great. I live in her basement, Ivy. I eat cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. In what universe is that doing great? There it was. The swap. My mother had taken the truth about each of us and reversed it. Ivy, the financial consultant with a 6-figure income, was the struggling one. Blair, the divorced yoga instructor living in a basement, was the success story. Loretta had rebuilt reality so completely that even Blair believed the version about me, and I believed the version about her. We were both living inside lies our mother had written, and neither of us had checked the footnotes until tonight. Through the glass, I watched Loretta raise her wine. I could not hear the words, but I knew the gesture. She does it at every gathering, every holiday, every dinner where she has an audience. She lifts the glass, waits for silence, and delivers a toast that sounds generous but always, if you listen closely, circles back to her. I imagined the words, something like, to family, to the ones who show up. The ones who show up, meaning Blair, meaning everyone at that table, meaning not me. I stood in the hallway between 2 rooms. In one, 8 people respected my judgment, paid for my expertise, and called me by my name. In the other, 14 people believed I was broke, lost, and barely surviving, because my mother had told them so, and nobody had thought to call me and ask. My phone buzzed one final time. Not Blair this time. Ren, your clients love the Barolo. Also, your mother just sent her compliments to the chef through the waiter. Should I go out there and introduce myself as your business partner, or do you want to keep playing this game a little longer? I pocketed the phone, smoothed my blazer, walked back into the private room where Phil was on his second basket of bread and the investors were discussing expansion into Chattanooga. I sat down, opened my laptop, and pulled up the projection slides. But my hands were not as steady as they usually are. And the numbers on the screen, for the first time in a long time, were not the numbers I was thinking about. Phil was on his 3rd basket of bread and his 2nd glass of the Sangiovese when the conversation turned to expansion strategy. This was the part of the evening I was good at. Not the wine selection or the centerpieces or the ambient lighting, though I had chosen all of those too. The part where someone puts a problem on the table and I find the number underneath it. The Chattanooga location is going to hemorrhage for 6 months before it stabilizes, I said, pulling up a projection on my laptop. Your fixed costs are front-loaded because of the build-out, but your variable costs are actually lower than the Nashville flagship because of the lease structure. The question is whether you can absorb 6 months of negative cash flow without drawing on the operating reserves of the existing locations. The chef, a man named Bennett, who had spent 20 years in kitchens and 3 years learning how to read a spreadsheet, leaned forward. What do you recommend? Ring fence the Chattanooga capital. Separate account. Do not let it touch the Nashville numbers. If Chattanooga fails, Nashville survives. If you blend the accounts, one bad quarter in Chattanooga drags down everything. Bennett nodded. One of the investors, a woman named Claire who wore reading glasses on a chain and never smiled unless the numbers were good, wrote something in a leather notebook. The other investor asked a follow-up about tax liability across state lines. I answered without looking at my notes because I had run the models twice that week and once more in the car on the way to the restaurant. This is what I do. I find the weak point in the structure and I reinforce it before it cracks. I have been doing it for 11 years, and I am very, very good at it. I excused myself at 8:15 to check on the wine service for the second course. That was the real reason. The other reason was that the hallway called to me the way a scab calls to a fingernail. You know you should leave it alone. You know touching it will not help. But the knowledge does not stop the hand. I stepped into the corridor. The service station was empty. Through the frosted glass, I could see the shapes at my mother's table, the warm glow of candles, the movement of hands lifting glasses. Laughter rolled through the wall, muffled but recognizable. Loretta's laugh, the performative one. Then Marco appeared at the end of the hallway, heading toward the main room with a leather-bound wine list tucked under his arm. He saw me and paused. Miss Corbin, your Barolo is being very well received. 3 of your guests have asked for the vineyard name. Marchesi di Barolo, 2013. Tell them I'll send the distributor's contact after the event. Marco nodded. Then he leaned in, slightly, the way he does when he is about to say something that is technically professional but spiritually conspiratorial. Your mother's table has requested a wine recommendation. The host asked for something impressive but not too expensive. Should I suggest the consultant's selection? I should have said no. I should have told Marco to recommend the house Chianti and move on. That would have been the clean choice, the professional choice, the choice that kept the 2 rooms separate for the rest of the evening. Tell them the consultant selected tonight's pairings personally, I said. If they want the same wine, pour it. Marco straightened. And if they ask who the consultant is, tell them my name. He walked toward the main dining room. I watched him go. I watched him approach my mother's table, the table where 14 people believed I was broke and struggling and could not afford the appetizers they were currently eating. I watched him open the wine list and begin speaking. I could not hear the words, but I saw the moment. Marco gestured toward the private room. Loretta's head turned. Not a full turn. A quarter turn. The kind that pretends to be casual but is actually the body's earliest warning system. She looked at the hallway, at the frosted glass, at the space where I was standing. I stepped back. Not because I was afraid, because I was not ready for the collision yet. Not while my clients were still in the room and the Chattanooga projections were still on screen and Phil still had bread in his mouth. My phone buzzed. Blair. Something just happened. A waiter came over and talked about wine and a consultant who picked the bottles. Mom's face went weird. She asked who the consultant is. He said, Corbin. She went very quiet. I read the message standing in the hallway between 2 lives. One where I am Miss Corbin, the financial consultant who selected the Barolo and designed the private room and arrives early to adjust the water glasses. The other where I am Ivy, the daughter who failed at 24 and never recovered, who tempts and struggles and cannot afford gas money. Blair sent another message. Mom just excused herself from the table. She's walking toward the hallway. I pocketed the phone. My heart was doing something it does not usually do, which is beat fast enough for me to notice. I am a person who notices numbers, not heartbeats. But this one was loud. If you have ever stood perfectly still while a storm walked toward you, not because you were brave but because your feet had simply decided they were done running, you know the feeling. It is not courage. It is exhaustion dressed up as resolve. I did not move. I stood in the corridor, next to the service station, under the frosted glass, wearing a blazer I had chosen that morning and a watch my father gave me 26 years ago, and I waited. The door to the main dining room opened. Loretta stepped into the hallway. She was wearing a blue dress, the one with the buttons down the front that she saves for occasions. Her hair was curled, her lipstick was fresh. She looked like a woman who had everything together, which is the version of herself she works hardest to maintain. She saw me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hallway was narrow, the kitchen noise filtered through the walls. Somewhere behind me, in the private room, Phil laughed at something Bennett said. Then my mother crossed the distance between us in 4 steps, took my arm just above the elbow, and squeezed. Not gently, the way you grab someone when you are trying to move them without making a scene. "What are you doing here?" she said. Not a question, a warning. "I work here, Mom." Her grip tightened. Her eyes moved to the private room door, to the frosted glass, to the shapes of 8 people sitting at a $12,000 table that had my name on the reservation. "You work here," she repeated. "I'm the financial consultant for this restaurant. I have been for 3 years. The hallway was quiet. The kitchen noise had softened, or maybe I had stopped hearing it. My mother looked at me the way you look at a photograph you thought you recognized, but the person in it has changed so much you are not sure it is the same face. "You told me you were temping," she said. "You told me I couldn't handle money. I decided to let you keep believing that." Her hand was still on my arm. I did not remove it. I did not pull away. I let her hold on because I wanted her to feel the distance between who she thought I was and who was actually standing in front of her. Then the door to the main dining room opened again, and Aunt Gail stepped into the hallway. Aunt Gail stopped 3 steps into the hallway. She looked at Loretta's hand on my arm. She looked at my blazer, my posture, the way I was standing in this corridor like someone who belonged here. Then she looked at Loretta. "What's going on?" My mother released my arm. Not slowly. The way you release something hot? "Nothing. Ivy was just leaving." "I wasn't," I said. Gail tilted her head. "She has this way of examining people." My Aunt Gail. Patient and specific, like someone turning a jar of preserves to check the seal. "Ivy, honey. You look good. What are you doing here?" "I'm the financial consultant for this restaurant. I've been consulting for 3 years." Gail's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. "Financial consultant. For this restaurant." "Yes." She turned to Loretta. "Loretta, you told me she was temping." "She was temping. Years ago. I didn't know she had moved on to something else." My mother delivered this the way she delivers all revisions to the truth. Smoothly, with just enough hesitation to suggest she was processing new information in real time, not scrambling to cover old lies. It was a performance. A very good one. I had watched her do it my entire life, and it still impressed me the way a magic trick impresses you even after you know where the coin is hidden. "Loretta," Gail said again, quieter this time. "I gave you $5,000 3 years ago. You said it was to help Ivy get back on her feet." The hallway went still, not silent. The kitchen was still working, plates still moving, music still playing through the speakers in the main room. But the 3 of us stood in a pocket of stillness that had nothing to do with sound and everything to do with the fact that a question had been asked, and the answer was either the truth or the end of something. "That money helped the family," Loretta said. "It went where it was needed." "Where it was needed," I repeated. My mother looked at me the way she has always looked at me when I get too close to something she does not want examined. Not with anger, with a kind of urgent sweetness, the kind that says, "Please stop before you embarrass both of us." "Ivy, this isn't the time." "When is the time, Mom? You took $5,000 from your sister and told her it was for me. I never saw a cent of it. I didn't even know it existed until Blair told me an hour ago." Gail inhaled. A sharp, specific inhale. The kind you hear when someone adds a number to a column and the total comes out wrong. "Blair told you," Gail said. "Blair texted me." She didn't know either. Not the full picture, anyway. And then, as if the evening had decided that half measures were no longer sufficient, the door to the main dining room opened again, and Blair walked into the hallway. She stopped when she saw the 3 of us. Her eyes went from Gail to Loretta to me, and I watched her read the room the way she has always read rooms, quickly and with the accuracy of someone who learned early that knowing the emotional temperature was the difference between a quiet night and a loud one. "What's happening?" Blair said. Not a question, a request for coordinates. "Your sister is the financial consultant for this restaurant," Gail said. Did you know that? Blair looked at me. I looked back. She was still wearing the borrowed dress, and up close I could see it did not quite fit at the shoulders. Too wide. Probably Loretta's. Blair had been wearing Loretta's clothes since the divorce because her own were still in boxes in the basement, and buying new ones was not in the budget that did not exist because Blair did not have a budget because Blair did not have an income that could support one. Mom told me you were temping, Blair said to me. Quiet. Careful. The voice of someone rearranging furniture in a room that might have a gas leak. I know. She told me you couldn't hold down a job. I know that too. Blair turned to Loretta. Mom, she's a financial consultant. She works here. She has a private room with 8 people in it who paid 12, and you told me she was temping? Loretta's chin lifted. This is her tell. When the narrative gets away from her, when the audience stops clapping at the right moments, her chin goes up and her voice goes thin and she starts speaking in the third person about whichever daughter is currently inconvenient. That girl has always been difficult. She disappeared for 12 years and never told us anything. How was I supposed to know? You could have asked, I said. One phone call, one text. Hey Ivy, what do you do for a living these days? That's all it would have taken. I did ask. 3 Christmases ago. You said consulting. Like a temp. And you believed it. Because it was easier. Because the version of me that fails is the version you know how to be a mother to. The hallway felt smaller. Gail was standing with her arms crossed, doing arithmetic behind her eyes. Blair was looking at me the way you look at a map you have been reading upside down. And Loretta was standing very straight, chin up, lipstick perfect, dressed for a dinner party where every story she told was about to collapse. Blair spoke first. She turned to Loretta and said something I did not expect. Not a challenge, not an accusation, something worse. Mom, you told everyone at that table I'm doing great. You told Aunt Gail I'm thriving. I live in your basement. I eat cereal for dinner 3 nights a week. My divorce cost me everything I had, and I haven't taught a yoga class in 2 months because the studio cut my hours. In what universe am I doing great? Loretta blinked. You swapped us, Blair said. You told them Ivy was failing and I was fine. Neither of those things is true. You just picked which story made you look better. Have you ever watched someone see their own family clearly for the first time? It is not a dramatic moment. It is quiet and slightly nauseating, like standing up too fast. Blair's face did not crumble. It rearranged, the way a face does when it is processing something that has been true for a long time, but has only now found words. Loretta opened her mouth. I knew what was coming. I had seen it 100 times. The tears, the wobble in the voice, the pivot from accused to victim. I knew the choreography the way a dancer knows a routine she has performed so many times her body moves before her mind gives permission. But before Loretta could speak, Gail held up her hand. Loretta, I need to know. The $5,000 I gave you for Ivy, where did it actually go? The hallway waited. My mother looked at Blair. Blair looked at the floor. And I understood, before either of them said a word, exactly where the money went. Blair answered before Loretta could. It went to me. The words came out flat, the way words do when someone has been carrying them for a long time and finally sets them down, not thrown, placed. The way you place a glass on a table when your hands have been shaking and you do not want anyone to hear it rattle. The $5,000, Blair said. Mom used it for my apartment deposit. After the divorce, I didn't have enough for first and last month, and the landlord wouldn't take a payment plan, and Mom said she had it covered. Blair looked at Loretta. She didn't say where it came from. She said it was from savings. Gail's face did something I have only seen it do once before. At Uncle Don's funeral, when the minister mispronounced his name and Gail had to decide in real time whether to correct a man of God in front of 200 people, she chose to let it go that day. She was not going to let this go. Loretta, you took my money. You told me it was for Ivy. You used it for Blair's apartment. And then you sat at my Thanksgiving table 3 months later and told me Ivy was still struggling and might need more help. Gail's voice did not rise. It narrowed. Like a river entering a canyon. Same volume, twice the force. Did you ask anyone else for money on Ivy's behalf? Loretta's lips pressed together. A thin line. The line she draws when the script is not going the way she rehearsed. I did what I had to do for my family, she said. Your family! Gail repeated. Your family includes the daughter standing right here, who apparently makes more money than half the people at that table. Your family includes the daughter you told everyone was broke. Which daughter were you helping, Loretta? Because from where I'm standing, you were helping yourself. Do you know what it feels like to watch someone you have resented for years get exactly what you thought you wanted? It does not feel like victory. It feels like watching a building you set fire to actually burn, and realizing that your hands smell like smoke and there are people inside you did not account for. I stood in that hallway and I watched my mother shrink. Not physically. Loretta is a tall woman, 5'8" in the low heels she wears to dinner. But something behind her eyes pulled back, the way a tide pulls back before it either returns or gives up the shore entirely. And I felt something I did not expect. Guilt. Not for what I had done tonight. Not for showing up. Not for telling Marco to use my name. Not for standing in my own corridor, in my own restaurant where I have every right to be. The guilt was older than that, deeper. It had been sitting in the corner of every decision I had made for 12 years, and I had been stepping around it the way you step around a stain on the carpet that you keep meaning to clean, but never do, because cleaning it would mean admitting it was there. I had liked this. The secret. Wren said it in the kitchen hours ago, and I did not argue because she was right. I liked knowing something my mother did not. I liked the asymmetry. I liked that every time Loretta told someone I was struggling, the lie got bigger, and the eventual truth would hit harder. I had not just hidden my success. I had let the gap widen on purpose. I had fed the lie by starving it of correction. Loretta started crying. I knew this cry. I had catalogued every version of it the way a meteorologist catalogues storms. There was the soft cry, used for sympathy at church. The sudden cry, deployed when someone got too close to a truth she was not ready to release. The slow cry, reserved for holidays, designed to make everyone at the table feel responsible for her pain, without anyone being able to name what they had done. This was the slow cry. Head down, shoulders curled, one hand pressed to her chest like she was holding something in, though the thing she was holding in was not grief, it was strategy. I guess I'm a terrible mother, she said, voice cracking at precisely the right syllable. I guess everything I've done for this family means nothing. Gail did not move. Blair stared at the floor, and I stood there watching my mother perform the scene she has performed every time accountability walks into the room, and for the first time in my life, I did not feel angry about it. I felt tired, because I had been performing too. Different stage, different costume, same show. She performed the worried mother. I performed the wounded daughter. She told stories about me to feel important. I kept secrets from her to feel powerful. She took Gail's money and called it love. I took 12 years of silence and called it protection. We were both liars. The difference was that she lied to everyone else and I lied to myself. Gail spoke into the silence. Loretta, 10 minutes ago you told everyone at that table your daughter couldn't afford a new pair of shoes. She is standing in a restaurant where she manages the finances. In what possible version of reality did you think this was going to hold together? Loretta wiped her eyes. Straightened. The recovery was fast, the way it always is. Tears off, chin up, new angle. I was protecting her. That's what mothers do. I didn't want people to think she was showing off. Showing off, I said. You thought telling people I was broke was protecting me from showing off? You don't understand, Ivy. You've never understood. People in this family talk. If I told them you were doing well, they'd want things from you. They'd ask for money. They'd expect things. I was keeping them away from you. It was almost convincing. That is the thing about my mother. She finds the version of the lie that has a splinter of truth in it, and she holds it up like a window and says, see, look through this. The view makes sense. And if you squint, it does, for a second. Until you realize the window is facing a wall. Mom, I said, you weren't keeping people away from me. You were keeping me away from people. There's a difference. She looked at me, and for 1 second the performance flickered. Just 1 second, like a candle in a draft. Something behind the mask moved, something older than tonight, older than the restaurant, older than the vintage shop that failed when I was 24. Something that looked, if I am honest, like fear. Then it was gone, and Loretta was Loretta again. Chin up, lipstick perfect, ready for the next scene. But I was not ready for the next scene. Not the one she expected, anyway, because the scene she expected was the one where I accept her explanation, or reject it loudly, or walk away and add this night to the collection of wounds I carry in a box I never open. Those were the 3 moves I had always made: accept, reject, retreat. 3 options, all of which left the fundamental architecture of our relationship exactly where it was. I was going to try a 4th. I was going to tell the truth. Not the truth about my job or my income or my consulting contracts. She already knew that now. I was going to tell the truth about why I had hidden it. The real reason, the one Ren saw and I pretended not to. Because the version of revenge where only the villain is wrong is not revenge. It is a story. And I was done telling stories. Ren appeared at the end of the hallway like someone who had been listening from the kitchen and decided the timing was right. She looked at me, then at Loretta, then at Gail and Blair, and she said, "My office, 2nd door on the left. Take as long as you need." Then she looked at Gail. "Can I get you a glass of wine?" "On the house." Gail nodded once. Blair followed Gail back toward the main room, and my mother and I walked into Ren's office, which smelled like coffee grounds and rosemary and had a desk covered in invoices and a framed photo of Ren's mother on the wall, which felt like the kind of detail the universe puts in a room when it wants you to pay attention. Loretta sat in the chair by the desk. I stood, not to be taller, because sitting felt like agreeing to the shape of a conversation I had not yet decided to have. She spoke first. She always speaks first. It is how she sets the frame. "You did all this to humiliate me." I looked at her. "Mom, I did all this to pay my rent. You humiliated yourself. I just happened to be in the building." She flinched, not at the words, at the tone, because my voice was level and dry and carried no anger, and Loretta has spent 62 years calibrating her responses to anger. She knows how to meet a shout with tears. She knows how to absorb a scream by going limp. What she does not know how to handle is someone who is calm, specific, and unmoved. It is the one frequency she cannot tune to. "I have given everything to this family," she said. Her voice wavered. "Here it came. The performance. I raised 2 girls on my own after your father left. I kept the house. I kept the car. I kept my job and cooked dinner every night and never once complained. And this is what I get? My own daughter setting me up in a restaurant? You set yourself up, Mom. You told 14 people I was broke. In a restaurant where I manage the books. That's not my trap. That's your math." Her eyes filled. The tears arrived on schedule, glistening, perfectly proportioned, the way they always arrive when Loretta needs the conversation to change direction. I have seen this cry at Thanksgiving dinners, at school events, at the phone company when they overcharged her and she wanted the fee reversed. It works on strangers. It works on Blair. It has worked on me for most of my life. Mom, I know these tears. She blinked. I have watched you cry to end every difficult conversation since I was 11 years old. You cried when I asked why Dad left. You cried when I asked about the business loan. You cried when Blair told you she was getting divorced. And every time, the crying did the same thing. It made the other person stop talking and start comforting you. The conversation shifted from whatever you did to how everyone else made you feel. I paused. Not for effect. Because what I was about to say was the first completely honest thing I had said to my mother in 12 years, and I needed the words to land exactly right. These tears are not sadness. They are an exit strategy, and I am not going to follow you through that door anymore. Loretta stopped crying, not gradually, not the way tears dry on their own, fading like rain on a windshield. She stopped the way a faucet stops, turned off, complete. And the face that remained when the tears were gone was one I had never seen before. Not angry, not performative, not sweet or strategic or any of the masks she rotates through like a wardrobe. Bare. That is the only word. Bare. The way a table looks when you clear everything off it and realize the wood underneath is scratched. "Then what do you want from me, Ivy?" Her voice was different, lower, stripped of the melody she usually laces through her sentences. "If you don't want the tears, and you don't want the apology, and you don't want me to explain, what do you want?" "I want to tell you the truth, the whole truth, not just the part that makes you look bad." She waited, and for the first time, she actually waited. did not fill the silence, did not redirect, did not perform. I hid it on purpose, I said. 12 years. I could have told you at any point, after I paid off the debt, after I got certified, after Ren hired me, after the first time a client told me I was brilliant, and I drove home and sat in my car and cried because no one in my family had ever said that word to me. I could have called you. I could have sent a photo. I could have shown up at Christmas with a business card and a bottle of wine from the cellar I helped curate. My hands were shaking. I put them in my pockets. I didn't tell you because I liked it. I liked that you didn't know. I liked that every time you told Aunt Gail I was struggling, the gap between your story and my reality got wider, and the eventual correction would hit harder. I wasn't protecting myself, Mom. I was building a trap, and tonight, I almost walked you right into it. The room was quiet. Ren's coffee maker ticked on the counter. The invoices on the desk fluttered under the air vent. You said something to me when I was 24, I continued. The night the shop failed, you said I was just like my father. Loretta's jaw tightened. You meant it as an insult. He was the man who left, the man who failed, the man who walked out and never came back. And you looked at me standing in the wreckage of a business I had poured everything into, and you said I was just like him. I took my hands out of my pockets, touched the watch on my left wrist, the silver face, the leather band, the second hand ticking half a beat too slow. But here is what you didn't know. Dad didn't just leave. He started over. He moved to Knoxville and opened a small furniture repair shop and ran it for 6 years before his heart gave out. I found out from a cousin when I was 29. Nobody told me. Nobody told you either, I think. Or maybe they did and you didn't want to hear it. Loretta was very still. I am like Dad. He built something. It fell. He built again. I built something. It fell. I built again. And I built it in a restaurant kitchen where the head chef is my best friend, and the manager calls me Miss Corbin, and the investors trust me with their money. I am exactly like my father, and that is the best thing you have ever said about me. Loretta looked at my wrist, at the watch. Her eyes stayed there for a long time. You still wear it, she said. Almost a whisper. Every day. He gave that to you the Christmas before he left. I know. I hated that watch. I hated that he gave it to you and not to me. I hated that you kept it. She swallowed. I hated that every time I looked at your wrist, I saw him, and then you went and failed the same way he did. And I thought, there it is. The proof. She's his. I am his, I said. And I'm yours. Both things are true. Loretta's hands were in her lap. She was not crying. She was not performing. She was sitting in a chair in a borrowed office, looking at a watch her ex-husband gave her daughter 26 years ago, and something was moving behind her face that I did not have a name for. I was scared, she said. The words came out like something pulled from deep water. I was scared you would leave, like he did, so I made you small. In my head, in the stories I told, if you were small and struggling, you needed me. And if you needed me, you wouldn't leave. The air conditioning hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a cork popped. Laughter from the main room filtered through the wall like light through curtains. But you left anyway, she said. You left without going anywhere. You just stopped telling me things. And I pretended I didn't notice. I sat down. Not in the other chair. On the edge of the desk, next to the invoices and the coffee maker and the photo of Ren's mother. I sat because my legs asked me to, and because standing over someone who has just said the truest thing they have said in 12 years felt wrong. Mom, I need you to hear something. I did not hide because you pushed me away. I hid because I wanted you to be wrong. I needed you to be wrong, because if you were wrong about me, then what you said that night did not matter. But if you were right, even a little, then maybe I really am the daughter who can't handle money, who can't keep a business, who can't keep anyone from leaving. Loretta looked at me. You were wrong, I said, and I was wrong to need you to be. Both things cost us 12 years. She reached for my hand. I let her take it. Her fingers were cold, the way fingers get when the blood has been busy elsewhere, keeping the heart running, keeping the lungs open, keeping a woman upright in a chair while the story she has been telling herself for a decade folds quietly in half. Your father, she said. Your father was also good at numbers. It was not an apology. It was not absolution. It was Loretta, for the first time in my memory, saying something kind about the man who left her, because she had finally seen that the parts of him she hated were the same parts of me she was looking at right now. And those parts had built something real. I squeezed her hand. She squeezed back. Neither of us said anything else for a while. We just sat there, in Wren's office, next to the invoices, under the fluorescent light, holding on to each other the way two people hold on when they have been drowning separately and have only just realized they were in the same water. 2 weeks later, I called my mother on a Tuesday evening. Not a Friday, not a holiday. Just a Tuesday, because the truth is that healing does not wait for convenient timing, and neither should the phone calls that start it. Mom, the Julienne has a table open tonight. Do you want to come? A pause. Long enough for me to hear the television in the background. One of her courtroom shows. The volume dropped. You want me to come to your restaurant? I want you to see where I work. Another pause. Then, what should I wear? She arrived at 7:15. I met her at the door. She was wearing the blue dress again, the one with the buttons, but this time her hands were not steady. She held her purse with both hands, the way you hold something when you are not sure the floor beneath you is solid. I walked her through the kitchen first. Wren was plating a risotto and did not look up, which was Wren's way of giving us space while also making it clear she was listening to every word. I introduced Loretta to the sous chef, the pastry cook, the dishwasher who has worked there since opening day and knows more about the restaurant than anyone on the payroll. This is my mom, I said to each of them. Loretta smiled. Not the performance smile. A smaller one, the kind that does not know where to land. I showed her the wine cellar, the inventory system I built, the private dining room, empty tonight, chairs pushed in, table bare. This is the room, she said, the $12,000 room, client events, quarterly. The restaurant covers the cost. I select the wine and manage the guest list. And they pay you for this. They do. She touched the back of a chair, ran her finger along the walnut edge. You chose this table? I chose everything in this room. She nodded, did not speak. Her eyes moved across the space the way eyes move when they are taking inventory of something they should have seen a long time ago. We sat at a table for two in the main dining room. Not the private room, the regular floor, near the window, where the streetlights on 2nd Avenue make the linen glow the color of warm milk. I ordered a bottle of the Vermentino because it is light and clean, and I thought she would like it, not because it was expensive. She took a sip and said, "That's nice," and she meant it. "The wine your clients drank," she said. "The Barolo. How much does a bottle like that cost?" "More than you want to know. And you picked it." "I pick all of them." She set down her glass, looked at me across the table. "I told people you were broke, Ivy. I told my sister. I told my friends. I told Blair." "I know. And you let me?" "I did." "Why?" "Because I was angry. And anger is patient when it wants to be." She took another sip of wine. "You're honest now." "I'm trying to be." Her phone buzzed. "Blair on FaceTime." Loretta answered. Blair's face filled the screen, the basement visible behind her, a bowl of cereal on the coffee table. "Mom, where are you?" Loretta turned the camera toward the restaurant, the linen tablecloth, the wine glasses, the window with the streetlights. "I'm at my daughter's restaurant," she said. Blair's face went through 3 expressions in 2 seconds: confusion, recognition, and something softer that I did not have a name for. "Tell Ivy I said hi," Blair said, "and tell her I want a tour." Loretta hung up, looked at me. "She wants a tour." I heard, "Maybe next week? The 3 of us?" "Maybe next week." The waiter came. "Asked about dessert?" Loretta looked at the menu, then set it down. "You choose," she said. "You know this place better than I do." It was a small sentence, 5 words, but it was the first time my mother had ever let me choose without telling me what I should have chosen instead. It was the first time she had sat across from me and admitted that I knew something she did not, and that was okay, and the world did not end because her daughter was competent. I ordered the panna cotta, 2 spoons. We ate it slowly. She asked me about the restaurant. Real questions. When did you start? How did you meet Wren? What is the hardest part? What is the best part? Questions she could have asked 12 years ago, if she had not been so afraid that the answers would prove I did not need her. I answered every one. Outside, the streetlights on 2nd Avenue hummed the way they do every night, steady and unhurried, the way light works when it is not trying to prove anything. My father's watch ticked on my wrist, half a beat too slow, the way it always has. It was not an ending. Loretta would have to call Aunt Gail. She would have to talk to Blair about the basement, the cereal, the life that had been shrinking while Loretta told the world it was growing. There would be difficult conversations and probably more tears, and some of those tears would be real. But tonight, it was a table for two, my mother and me, wine she liked, dessert I chose, no performance, no audience, just dinner. When was the last time you let someone see who you really are? Not the version they expected, not the one you built to survive, the one you became when no one was watching. I hope someone sees you soon. You already know the version of you that your family tells. The question is whether you have ever corrected it, or whether the silence became something you needed too. Sometimes we hide our success not because we are modest, but because we want the people who doubted us to stay wrong a little longer. It feels like protection. It is not. It is a prison you built yourself and handed someone else the story about who locked the door. If someone in your life has been telling a version of you that no longer fits, you have two choices. You can wait for them to notice, or you can sit down, say the hard thing, and find out whether the relationship can survive the truth. What version of you is someone still telling, and how long have you let them?